you know, um, that's some of the bully that I get as
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
veterinarian.
It's shocking to me that people bully people for who they, not what, but who they choose to eat or who they choose not to eat. But I think part of the bullying is that people are threatened by it, or they somehow have overcome their cognitive dissonance. That's what they call it. And which is clear in society today, that people can do all these very, very violent things and then justify them in the name of whatever they choose to justify them. But I can see in the vet, and I'm not a veterinarian, and I know a lot of veterinarians, but I can see in the veterinarian arena, if you will, why being vegan and talking about how important it is to pay close attention to who you eat is disturbing, to say the least. But anyway, you've gone on to a great career, and veterinarians around the world are happy that you are a veterinarian, regardless of who you eat. And a lot of people just are not going to get in your face. But so you got out of vet school as a vegan. What do you like about your job? What's your favorite thing, if you will, or what things that you encounter in your veterinary practice?
I would say my favorite thing is that I am making the dream of my life true by helping animals with my own hands, doing surgeries on them, speaking up for them with their guardians. I like educating people how to treat animals better. And I love that I have some power or authority to speak up as a, as an expert in animals, as a veterinarian. Yes, those are the things that I love about my career so far.
But I would imagine that as a veterinarian, you have credibility, and that whether people agree with you or not, they would treat you nicely. I mean, I know in my life as an academic that that's not true at all, because people like to take cheap shots and also criticize people who aren't part of the mainstream, which you're not, by the way, just in case you ever thought you were. But I know that you're not. So I know you've gone through different phases in your practice, and so what is it that got you to start your mobile veterinary practice? I mean, I think it's laudable. It's amazing what you're doing. But what was it that motivated you to sort of put wheels on, if you will, your career?
I think just seeing the amount of help that is needed in Los Angeles area with TNR, which means trap, neuter, and release. So that's my main goal with my surgery truck, is I want to help with TNR in different locations and surgeries. My business is focused on people that rescue animals from shelters or other rescues. I definitely don't see purebred animals or animals from breeders. And I also help when I can, I do rescue wild animals around LA when people contact me. So I just wanted to be my own boss. I was very tired of other corporations or companies basically abuse me. I don't know if you're aware, but there's a huge crisis in the veterinary field. There's not a lot of veterinarians as it is in the US, because there's not enough schools to, graduate. It's really expensive to go into vet school, and it's also increasing the percentage of people committing suicide in the field.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it's. I mean, I know a lot of veterinarians, and they're trying as hard as they can, if you will, to survive as veterinarians, regardless of the difficulty of the overarching organizations, if you will, that run or try to run your life. But it is it's a really difficult position. I mean, what I like about the mobile veterinary clinic or clinics. I think I've seen one around Boulder, but I'm not quite sure if it is a mobile grooming or a mobile vet clinic. It increases accessibility to people who, number one, can't afford it, or number two, have no idea. I mean, people laugh when I say that, but there's so many people who have no idea how to get adequate human health, no
Right.
less than non-human health care. So do you think that you're accessing communities that wouldn't otherwise have access to good veterinary care?
Yes, that's definitely one of my goals, especially with rescues. I see it's it's a lot of trouble to put in cages and drive so many animals at once to the vet.
Mhm.
And most vets, with all reason, charge exams per animal. So I try to do it like a per hour fee, so I can
Mhm.
I can help shelters and rescues, because they are basically cleaning the mess that some people are causing by breeding too many dogs, selling them, giving them away, selling them from, Craigslist, or importing them from other states or even other countries when, shelters are completely full.
But how's the reception been by other vets and shelters and humane societies to your mobile endeavors?
Well, I don't have my truck quite ready, but I've been working with some rescues and organizations that I was already working anyways,
Mhm.
and it's
Mhm.
been good. I think the work is just so needed that they don't really care what are your ideas or
Yeah.
anything. Like I'm like the vegan vet, and most vets don't really get into the conversation. Some of them are curious about it and ask me in a really nice and serious way, which is awesome. And there's always somebody who's gonna be a little bit defensive or um, you know,
I
not
mean,
happy.
why would they care what your meal plan is? I mean, I find that astounding because I get that sometimes too from some colleagues, and I don't engage with them because unless they're nice. I mean, I think if they ask a question politely or they're nice, I'll engage them for a bit. But why would anybody care who or what you eat? I mean, it just seems so trivial if you're doing your job as a veterinarian or a medical doctor or a professor or architect or whatever it is you do. Why do you think? I guess what I was thinking, because I know what you've been doing, and I've talked to you about this in the past. I mean, why do people even care about your meal plan? It's your choice. As long as you're a good vet, it's none of their business.
Well, I mean, I think in our field, which is, say, compared to any other that has to do with computers only, or say making ice cream, we work with animals all day. It's very emotional. We can go from, seeing a little cute puppy to seeing a hit by a car dog.
Mhm.
Sometimes we see companion animals like pot-bellied pigs and chickens. So I feel and I notice that some vets will get a little bit defensive because it's a very deep, like almost like moral or value that, no, believe me, they do care. Well, I wanted to say, as veterinarians, I think the majority are a little bit scared because of the increase on liability if, say, animals receive personhood. Like if they see that animals increase their value in our society, if anything else happens, we would be, we will get this big. I mean, we already get sued by just a bunch of other,
Right.
nonsense stuff. But I feel like that's probably the fear number one.
Mhm.
Another thing that happens in, all people, the general population, is there's some traditional or religious beliefs that humans are on top of every single species, and they just follow that in all. Like, it's almost like they see us animal rights veterinarians as ridiculous by considering animals as valuable and as important as humans, right?
But why are they veterinarians then if they don't think? I mean, I understand what you're saying because I've had similar discussions, but why do they care? I mean, you and other vegan vets, if you will, vegetarian vets, and even carnivorous vets, you're doing a service for the animals, and that comes first. So they have no right, in my opinion, they have no right to question. I mean, they can question you, but they have no right to pass judgment on who you are or what your political or dietary plans are. I mean, I think it's a threat because I think it's radical. And I wonder if implied in some of their criticism is that you're then not being a good veterinarian, which of course is ridiculous. I just, in all honesty, and why I love this conversation is it's no one's business but my own what my meal plan is. It's no one's business but my own what TV shows I watch or books I read. I mean, it just, I don't know, has it got, so one thing I was thinking of, because I was talking to somebody on a bike ride today, actually, was I think social media has magnified and, if you will, exacerbated, which is why I'm not on social media, because it's like, oh, did you know Daniela? She's a great veterinarian, but she's one of those vegans. And I'm going, well, who gives a damn? I mean, it just doesn't matter. I mean, in a sense, I could say it wouldn't matter if you ate hot dogs. I wish you wouldn't, of course, but what does it matter if I go to see you to take care of my dog and you treat my dog well? I mean, big deal. I mean, it's a sideshow. That's what I mean. But I think, quote, being vegan is viewed as being, quote, radical, but there's no connection at all to what the quality of the veterinary services or medical services. If you were a human doctor and you were doing surgeries, it doesn't affect, I mean, you in terms of what
it does affect other veterinarians that are dedicated or that support or that have any economic interest in, like, CAFOs and all kinds of farms and animal products and fur farms. And there's even veterinarians that are breeders. So there is an interest, there's a personal interest, and that's what I can say.
But it's because it's like Temple Grandin, who's, the iconic apologist, the iconic humane washer for industrial animal factory farming. And she does get away with murder. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. And it's not a personal thing. It's more, wait a minute, she works for companies. She recently published a little comment in a medical ethics journal from the AMA. And at the bottom, she had to do a disclosure statement. And she disclosed everything that everyone knows, is that, she works for the industry. So it's like, I think it's like when my mom was alive, it would be asking my mother to review one of my books, and she would, she would love it. It just, we can move on. It just astounds me. And I felt this way a lot just because I've been vegan for a long time, vegetarian for a really long time. And very few of my colleagues ever really got in my face about it if I continued to do research and write books and do my job. But every now and again, somebody would say, if you came up with a radical idea, well, he's just vegan. And I'm going, hello? Could you please explain to me, what that means? I also may not use the toothpaste you use or whatever. So anyway, the reason I find this valuable, and it's something I've been interested because of you and a few other veterinarians, is why does anybody think they have the right to intrude in your life if you're doing your job? And I think the economic interest is really true, Daniela. I really do. And of course, they represent pet food companies that, for the most part, maybe there's some good pet foods out there, poison the animals who they want to save. But anyway, we can roll on. I don't want I don't want to get you in trouble, but I just find it astounding that people are so nosy, and they bring up things that have nothing, zero, blank, nada to do with your ability and other vegan or vegetarian veterinarians to do their job. So anyway, so the next question was, what is it that you really want to tell your colleagues about yourself? And maybe you've already done that, but what is it that you want to share? You're very uninhibited about sharing your views, which I think is really praiseworthy. You're not sort of hiding in the closet, eating tofu or something. So what is it that you would like to tell your colleagues?
Well, I would like to tell my colleagues to open their hearts and their minds. I will love for them to research the difference between animal welfare and animal rights. And I would love for them to take the time and meet a animal rights activist and see that they're not the enemy. I would like for them to just consider the way the world is at right now, because if you think about it, there's already plant-based options for everything, right? From bacon to ice cream, everything. So there's really not a need for us to continue contributing with money and our time and our knowledge to these huge corporations that are basically, making a lot of money from these innocent animals. I've been thinking a lot about this concept of, in a way, I feel like the humanity is a little bit confused with the concept of love, and how when you truly love somebody, you want them the best, you want them to be free, you want them to be happy, you want them to be healthy. So when I was a kid, I always said, I love animals, I love my dog, I love my dogs, I love my turtle, I love all these animals. So when I grow up, I want to save them and save their lives and take care of them and heal them with my own hands and my knowledge and my skills, right? I love my husband, and I wouldn't chop it into little pieces and put it in the fridge and just eat him later when I'm hungry. Like, that's not love, so I just want all vets to think about the concept and how, why did we go to vet school, and why it's so wrong to just consider plant-based options and a plant-based lifestyle. Is more not, I don't see it as a dietary option, but it's more like a lifestyle, because as veterinarians, we want to stop, working at zoos and help wildlife rehabilitation centers, and stop contributing to plant, CAFOs, and maybe help farm sanctuaries instead of. So I just want to tell my colleagues that I know that the crisis is hard, and there's so many other emotional, complex things in our job to be on top of that, worried about who do we eat. But this who is the main reason why we are doctors. It's like asking, pediatricians to not eat their patients, babies. Is the same. To me, it's the same concept, because babies cannot defend themselves or talk, and so as other people, maybe people with, mental illness. So as humans, we speak up for them to have the right to have a life free of pain and slavery and mutilation. So it's the exact same right that we animal rights activists are fighting for. We're not fighting for their right to have abortions or drive a car. It's just animals are conscious, living, innocent, intelligent, sensitive, curious, living beings.
Sentient.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, yes.
Yeah, no. I mean, you're saying everything that's so true. I mean, the vegan ethic, the way I cash it out, and there's been a couple of books, and I've interviewed some people who have written them, is really a broad-based ethic that it feeds into, if you will, lots of different areas of life. And then, of course, the amount of the amount of water and energy and land that goes into producing dog food, for example. People are astounded when they learn about how much environmental and ecological degradation occurs because of the dog food industry. But the vegan ethic has, as you're saying, I think is a very caring ethic. I mean, I was thinking about this before we, if you will, went on air, and Jessica Pierce and I wrote a book called The Animal's Agenda, where we talked about replacing the science of animal welfare with the science of animal well-being, because the science of animal welfare basically simply says, well, we're doing the best we can. And if we are doing the best we can, then it's okay to do all the horrible things we do to animals. Whereas the science of animal well-being focuses on the inherent intrinsic value of every life. I mean, very, very simply, of every single life. And therefore, it means that we just can't willy-nilly, if you will, decide that we're better than, higher than, above, and separate from, in a hierarchical fashion, other animals.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you clarified the difference between that. And I feel like welfare is just to like make your consciousness feel better about it, you know?
It's a feel-good thing. It's like humane washing, welfare washing. It's Temple Grandin type stuff.
Yes.
You feel good. You know, in this essay that she wrote, or this opinion piece she wrote, she said, at the very least, we owe cutting through the chase, food animals a good death. Well, of course we owe them and every being a good death. But in the article, she was talking about all these different ridiculous measures of welfare in food animals, focusing on what she calls her stairway to heaven, which is really a stairway to hell. It's a stairway to death. It's a stairway to a bloodbath on the killing floor of slaughterhouses, ignoring they were born, they get ripped away from their mother. Mother cows and other food animals have their children ripped away from them because, scientists like to call them offspring or young. They're their children, and they go crazy screaming when they're separated. So the life of these animals is not only, or the horrible life to their last few seconds walking up some stairway to heaven, she calls it. The first time I read that a few years, probably about 10 or 15 years ago, really, I thought I would have to go out and drink a whole bottle of vodka because it was just the most amazingly dumb thing I've ever read.
100% agree. After I read the book Animals in Translation, I was so confused, and I went for a bottle of whiskey, I think. But it's so crazy that but yeah, that's what welfareists are doing, making us feel better. But if you think about what is a really humane, so this is the other thing I would ask other veterinarians, like, what is a humane way to die? In my logic, something humane would be something that I would apply to myself or somebody that I really love, like another human, or say one of my beautiful companion animals, Balito. It's right here. Yep. So I wouldn't send Balito to a slaughterhouse and have that, what they do to pigs and cows done. Well, it's a very different concept what we do on companion animals, and in some countries, humans, like euthanasia, which is a true death, not just these nonsense slaughtering and these, depopulation methods.
Right. You read about animals on dairy farms, animals on industrial, at capos, animals in zoos, including healthy animals who are euthanized. And I coined the word zoothanized because, recently a zoo in Ireland killed a healthy wolf pack because their leader died. Marius the giraffe, almost 10 years ago, was murdered in the Copenhagen Zoo because he was otherwise healthy, but he couldn't contribute to their gene pool. So they said they euthanized him.
Yes.
No, they euthanized him. They killed him. They murdered him. Let's just cut through the chase. That's what they did. But the concept of saying we owe these animals a good death after giving them the crappiest and most painful existence, and it's also humiliating. It's disrespectful. It's indecent. The lives that we ask them to.
It is, and I remember you sending me those articles, and that is really common in a lot of zoos. We just don't hear about it. Like at the zoo that I work in my last year of vet school, we euthanized a tiger because we couldn't afford the medications for his arthritis that were caused by his declawing to be able to be, enslaved in a zoo and not represent any risk for these humans that just wanted to put him in how do you say, like just like an ornament, for these plays. So
it's sanitizing. It's like, because I'm a field biologist and I do field work on different animals, and people use the word culling instead of killing or murdering, because culling sanitizes it, or removing, and all the words. We're going a bit afield, but I think it does. But that's okay. I mean, it all comes back to me and my own naivety of still being incredulous that people would really care about your meal plan, or you or anybody else, if you're otherwise doing good work for the non-humans. I mean, it's irrelevant. It's like telling you what TV show you should watch or what books. It's very authoritarian. And I find that distinctly disturbing. But I know we're going to be running. Oh, God, keep going. I'm looking. Okay, my next question, maybe it's related to this, is how would you visualize a vegan world?
Okay, I'll answer that. But before, I want to say a quick comment about, I don't agree with what you were saying, that is a dietary plan, because it is a lifestyle, and we are judged again in the veterinary field because our lifestyle is directly related to our relationship with animals. And that's kind of like, it is what it's the skeleton of veterinary medicine is our relationship towards animals. So like, if you're going to be spending your entire day reading an article or like how to save an animal's life or a surgery, like why would you go home afterwards and eat a chicken patient or a cow or a little piglet? But that could be an awesome discussion, because I'm sure a lot of people don't see it the way we see it. Like, actually, I had that same discussion with a lot of people, like including my husband. But the way I visualize a future vegan world is definitely having all plant-based options or not options, just straight plant-based only meals in all restaurants, of course. There's the culture meat. I don't see it as a bad thing. I see it as an option for people that definitely don't want to, eat plant-based. I see the end of zoos and aquariums and circuses and being replaced by animal sanctuaries and, wildlife rehabilitation centers. I see veterinarians being in the front line to be the defenders of animals' rights, like simple animal rights, the right to not feel any unnecessary pain, the right to not be slaved, the right to not be mutilated, not inseminated, artificially inseminated for, offspring that we're gonna just grow in a few weeks and then inhumanely killed for unnecessary animal products. I see the end of fur farms. I see all of the, companies using plant-based options for fabric and plant-based furs, and lab testing ending. I mean, animal testing ending, and having volunteer humans that choose to volunteer testing medications or cosmetics. So I think I like dreaming on my future vegan world, because I truly believe that when you have a clear vision of anything that you want to do, it's more likely to achieve it. So I definitely hope that, if I don't see it before the end of my life, it's just definitely, a reality.
Yeah, I mean, I
I
think
can see it.
Yeah, well, no, I know you can, and you articulate it well. I mean, I think that really what it is what you've articulated is what people are calling, if you will, the vegan ethic, which goes beyond your meal plan. I see a couple of questions here that are interesting. So, what would you want to change in the veterinary oath? I mean, that's that's a fairly big question. So, you can answer it or not.
Well, I've been asking the same question to my other vegan vet friends, and but I think I will rewrite it and make it 100%. What's the opposite of anthropocentric?
Animal-centric,
Animal-centric. Yes, animal-centric.
well, zoocentric, yes.
Yes, remove completely any, interest from humans and societies. It's all about animals, health, and it will be an animal rights oath. And again, something in the words like we veterinarians, oath to keep defending the rights of animals, their the well-being, and all the things that we're doing and that we're supporting on animals. I see veganism as a boycott to these factory farms and corporations. And the only way to stop this is like stop giving them money and our support. So yes, that's what I would.
Yeah.
I will definitely throw the word vegan and animal rights in that oath, but that's just me.
Well, no, I mean, yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I'm looking here to two questions. Is that okay, Daniela?
Yes.
Yeah, it says let's see, Shreya, to both, what advice do you have for folks in the veterinary profession, their veterinary education, who are pro-animal rights but are worried about voicing their concerns? I mean, can I start on that one?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. I mean, I faced that for decades in academics. So what I really started doing is I didn't change my ways. I just decided that instead of talking about animal rights, I talked about animal well-being and animal protection. Some people said, well, that's not really getting to it. No, I mean, really, I was talking about animal rights, but I couldn't get my foot in the door. But over time, years ago when I started teaching here, I just brought it up my first or second year here that I wanted to do a non-dissection lab. And a lot of people in the department said, sure, great idea. Some just laughed. The two non-dissection labs filled before any of the other labs filled. So there was this undercurrent, if you will. And I talked to some of the students about it, and some of them really, and I don't mean it in a negative way, they couldn't articulate the reason. They just felt that they were studying biology, the science of life. So what were they going to be doing, killing animals or dissecting animals or using cat cadavers or whoever they use in these labs? So I think that's a really great question. And some people, like I said, well, you're really changing the name of the game. I wasn't changing the name of the game at all. I was just using vocabulary that I wish my opponents would use that would be nicer, if you will. And then Crystal asked these questions that plague me as well, about environmentalists advocating for public transportation, but they still drive a car, or going to meetings where there are no, if you will, not only vegan options, but no vegan or vegetarian options. That happened to me at a big conservation meeting it would have been about 15 years ago. So they went out and they went to a local store and they bought veggie burgers and pasta, which I thought was great. Nobody, who wanted to eat the food went into a rage, because probably then they wouldn't have done it. The next night, the vegan and vegetarian options disappeared before the hamburgers and the brisket. So a bunch of us got first in line and said, sorry, but this food is our food. If you want to eat it too, you go to the organizers and tell them that you want vegetarian and vegan food. So I think for me, it all comes down, and then, I don't know how much more time we have, and I want to hear more on this last question I have. It just comes down to, we all make mistakes. We all deal with dissonance in our lives. I don't believe anybody is a perfect human being, but it seems to me that meal plans are pretty easy to stick by, because I traveled a lot, and people would say, how could, or I'll say to people, well, you could try doing this vegetarian option, these vegan options, and they'll go, well, I travel a lot. My goodness gracious. I'm preaching to the converted here, but it's not hard to travel internationally and eat vegan. There's always French fries and potato chips and pasta and salad and good food, So, I just think, I feel my duty with my friends, and I don't want to say within my profession necessarily only, is to explain to people that, number one, it's easy to do. When I decided to do this, I always refer to it as cold tofu. Decades ago, I just really decided, I wasn't eating a lot of meat at all, but I just said, I'm not doing this anymore. And overnight I did it. And I bike race and I cycle a lot, and it had no effect on my physical health. It may have had a beneficial effect, but people were saying, you'll never be able to do these 100-mile races. You'll never be able to do this. I'm thinking, well, why not? I honestly wasn't eating a lot of meat before my indiscretions, which, at the time I didn't see, were maybe eating an egg every now and again or some cheese. But I think we need to live by example. And that, and I ask people a lot, very nicely, is like, you have these feelings. It's, people say they love their dog and then they don't take care of them. And I always say, I'm glad you don't love me. And, they laugh and they'll go, well, what do you mean? And I'll say, well, the fact is, you're saying that you have a very close attachment to an individual animal, and then you abuse them. So I think it's dealing with the dissonance. And the only other thing I'll say is, as hard as it is, we need to be nice to the people who bug us the most. I know it's hard, but once you get into a pissing match with someone and they become defensive, it's all over. You're done, And the other thing is, you're not going to change. I'm not going to change, and they're not going to change. So I think it's perfectly okay to just say, I agree to disagree. I want to move on and talk to people who at least have the door open for change. And I think that nicely leads to what I think is my last question. Well, it isn't. We already got into the veterinary oath. Let's see. Well, maybe I should have asked this before, but what's your least favorite part of veterinary medicine, and how do you cope with it? Well, maybe that is a good final question. What do you dislike the most, but it doesn't prevent you from still practicing veterinary medicine?
Probably dislike seeing neglected animals. I'm having a really hard time with the overpopulation of animals crisis, just the lack of education that there is with the general public about spaying and neutering and not breeding. Mostly people considering animals things, and from that it just, goes like, oh, well, I can replace this dog, or it doesn't have these he or she doesn't have the value, and we call them eat and things like that. I have a hard time when things, of course, don't go right, and like surgery and things like that, because I just feel very responsible for the lives of animals.
Sure.
And well, and when actually you were talking about it, it's just this whole issue in my head about why veterinarians are not choosing to, you know, feel distinguish between dogs and cats, you know, and other animals. Like we should be really looking for the best interest of all animals, not just dogs and cats, right? So believe it or not, I don't like a lot of things about my profession, and I don't want to be a vet sometimes, but then I have my husband convincing me go back to be a vet. And I think I deal with I think I'm more extroverted than most veterinarians, so I like going party and just socializing and you know, drinking a beer or two and just talking to people to recharge my battery. So I think maybe that's how I cope with, you know, my issues and my depression as a vegan vet. Yeah, and I finally wanted to say that actually I wanted to read a little bit of your book that oh dear, where did I leave it?
You probably threw it away.
Oh my goodness, Balito. Oh yeah, Balito, my cat here, made it full. And I'm gonna read this quickly, but the difference between animal rights and animal welfare from your book, which I discovered in like somewhere in 2001. Is that when you wrote it? And it made me really
Which book is it?
Animals Matter.
Oh, 2010.
Oh, was that 2010?
Yeah.
So about animals' rights and animal welfare, they might insist that we should not. So animal welfare might insist that we should not cause them excessive or unnecessary pain, and argue that if we consider animal welfare or well-being, then that it's all we need to do. These people are called welfareists. The rightists believe that it is wrong to cause animals any pain and suffering, and that animals should not be eaten, held captive in zoos, subjected to painful experiments, or used in most or any research. They believe that animals have certain moral and legal rights that include the right to not be harmed. So when I read this paragraph from your book in like chapter 5, it definitely it started this revolution in my brain of why I wanted to become an animal rights activist and why I just wanted to, you know, work on this until my last breath in this planet. So I really thank you for that inspiration and for, you know, being my friend. And I think we can, unless you have anything else to add or any other questions, we can probably end the meeting.
No, I don't. I mean, I think there were some questions in the chat. No, I mean, I think these are really, I mean, you know, in the end, it's just, you just can't give up. I mean, once again, with your, you know, with you all, you just got to really stick to your views, knowing that in some ways we sometimes don't do everything that we want to do. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It just, you know, that, you know, just, and keep talking to people about it. I really believe that we just need to keep putting it out there. It's hard because we all might like immediate gratification, and somebody puts a star on your forehead because you're so right about all these things. But I do think that over time, and it may not be for a real, I mean, the worst thing, of course, would be is if we stopped doing what we're doing and putting out the message. And I understand why people stop. I mean, it's, you know, empathy fatigue, compassion burnout, empathy burnout. I mean, it really, it's easy to understand. It's it's like, it's even, it's, I always think of it, it's like Sisyphus, but it's like, instead of going up 2 notches and coming back 1 and up 2 and back 1, it's going up 2 and coming back 1.9999. So the advances are infinitesimal, but I'm encouraged by the work I do with a lot of kids. I do a lot of work with Jane Goodall and her Roots and Shoots program, and I am really, really, really inspired by the young kids with whom I work. There was a sophomore in high school in New York who wanted to close the Bronx Zoo. I mean, is she going to be able to do it? Well, I don't think so. But we had a great chat about it. Just having that idea. And then last month, I got an email from a kid, and I had no idea how old he was or anything, but he sent me some questions and he wanted to talk to me. And I said, okay, let's do a Zoom. And when I work with students, I always want a teacher or a parent there just to make sure everything goes okay. And then I'm talking to this kid and I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, he's not very old. So I asked Mom, who was really supportive, lovely woman, how old is your kid? And she said, oh, he's in 4th grade and he had just gone vegetarian. And I mean, the questions he was asking me, in a sense, rivaled some freshmen in college when I used to teach at the university. So I look for inspiration among those kids. And I did an event a couple of months ago in Denver at the governor's mansion. And there was this little girl there who had the presence of an adult. Turns out she was like in 1st grade, and she had decided she just wanted to be vegan. Her parents were very, very supportive. Her mom's a doc and had been vegan. She just got up in front of 100 people and gave a talk that I wish I could have given even 30 years ago, no less, when I was maybe 7 years old. So
absolutely.
And the reason I'm telling you these stories is that we just have to grasp for all the success stories, and there's a lot of them, and just don't give up. And when you feel you're burning out, stop. I always say for myself, I work hard, I play hard, and I rest hard, because burnout is we're taking the voices away from a lot of really wonderful people who could make a difference. And I was thinking about what Daniela was saying, and maybe other veterinarians who are here, how many barriers there are to cross. And you just have to keep the faith. I know that sounds just so 60ish, but you got to keep the faith that what you're doing is right. And the world will be a better place when people stop harming and eating other animals. And when people say it won't be, fine, let them think it won't be, but don't let that deter you from doing the good work you need to do. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's so true. I think these vegan kids, which there are a lot of them, are definitely giving me hope and faith in this movement. This is one of the reasons why I'm doing these episodes, because I want to show the stories of these vegan veterinarians. I think from my heart, Dr. Jenny Conrad, Deborah Bulgaris, Aileen Kenny, Joanne Connolly, Sherstin Rosenberg, and Melissa Resnick, who have been already interviewed in this series of episodes. I had the pleasure of meeting beautiful kids from my friend Melissa like a month ago. This 9 or 12-year-old superstar, Caleb. He's like a vegan kid since being born, and he made this amazing song. He's like a star. So yeah, they are the future of the world, and I am, I'm so happy to.
Well, it's also important to be positive, because I had a little girl she was a 1st or 2nd grade girl, and I was being very positive. I was putting forth all the stuff that Jane likes to put forth in the Roots and Shoots. And at the end, she said, thank you for being, she was like maybe 6 or 7 years old. And, thank you for giving me hope, because people come in and they talk to our class and they're really prophets of doom. She didn't use that, but that's what I call them. And she said to me, why in the world would I want to work for something where failure is guaranteed? I mean, it completely blew my mind. Driving home, I just almost had to stop and go, yeah, I mean, I'm a very positive person. And she said, you got to be positive with us young people, or else you're telling us, why should we try to go climb Mount Everest when you're saying it's impossible to do? And I think we're losing a lot of young people in, if you will, the animal rights, animal protection movement. I don't mean we people here, but I think as a sort of generic we, because we're making it seem so impossible. So this high school girl who wanted to close the Bronx Zoo, she said, you probably think I'm crazy. And I went, no, I don't think you're crazy at all. And she said, you think I can do it? And I just said, I don't know, but let's work on a plan that you could present to them and people. And that was it. So has she closed the Bronx Zoo? This happened a couple of years ago. No, but it doesn't, I mean, when I say it doesn't matter, of course it matters. It would be nice if the Bronx Zoo were closed, but what an ethic, you know, and that's why I like looking at the vegan ethic in a really broad way, because it touches so many other aspects of our lives.
Absolutely.
Not only, if you will, our meal plans. So anyway, thanks you all for coming, and thanks, Danielle.
Thank you. And finally, I just wanted to say, well, for people that are watching us and are not vegan, there's 3 different reasons why people go vegan. One is health, the other is environment, and the third is ethics, which is for animal rights. And I want to just close this by saying that I think it's important to dedicate ourselves to promote a vegan lifestyle because of animals, because it teaches kids compassion. Compassion and violence might have the same root. So if we are educating our kids since very young that it's not okay to treat animals this way anymore, and we can get everything else from plants, I think we'll probably see a world without any more wars and, you know, negative feelings and violence. I want to say thank you to everybody here tonight, to my family, my husband, and everybody who's supporting me. And thank you so much, Marc. I really appreciate it. And I'm very happy to see you. And I hope you have a good night.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.